Hi, my name is Ken McAlpine, and I'll be your host for today's episode of Our Ventura TV. Today we're really fortunate to have as a guest Paulette Mahurin. She's the author of a beautiful book called The Persecution of Mildred Dunlap. It's a really thoughtful story. It's in part about hatred and intolerance, but more than that, it's a story about inspiration, love, and the power of friendship. You can read more about Paulette at Amazon.com. Paulette, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Well, it's funny, as an author you probably hate this question, but let's start by telling our listeners a little bit, our viewers a little bit about your novel. I mean, how long did it take you to write, and what possessed you to write this in the first place? It was published in 2012.
Correct, a year ago. Well, I was a healthy, striving, working individual, and I came down with a tick bite and got Lyme disease, so I had a lot of time on my hand that I couldn't do much of anything, so I started writing. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and when I started feeling better, I took a writing class, and in the writing class, the teacher came in with a photograph of two women, circa turn of the 20th century.
Would it be this photo?
This
would be the cover of the book?
It would be that cover, and it was around the time Oscar Wilde was imprisoned, and I pulled together. These women looked scared and fearful of something, and the theme of what we had to write for our exercise was a mystery and a secret. So I made them lesbians on the frontier, afraid of being found out, and then it was pay dirt, because 1895 is that time period is when Oscar Wilde was imprisoned, and that was a watershed moment in history for homophobia and intolerance. So it was a stroke of luck that it came to me and that it all happened that way. So I'm a grateful chronic illness person who writes.
There's a lot of serendipity with writing, isn't there? You hear the word lightning strike, and it sounds kind of cliche, but it's kind of true in a sense.
Oh, it totally is. I mean, there were so many times, Ken, when I felt it was writing me, it was doing me. This incredible story kept coming through, and the characters were talking and telling me, like with your story, standing on the shore and speaking out and saying what they had to say, and it was magic, and it was wonderful to be that vehicle that got to put it down on paper.
Now, you had an underlying hope in mind, right? Did you want to address the themes of intolerance? And I mean, there's a beautiful passage in the acknowledgments about how your aim with the book was to address these, unnecessary hatreds, and then it's people's business what their skin color is or their sexual preference is. I mean, so you had a serious underlying motive to the book?
Absolutely. I'll give you one specific example that's so profound. It will act as a metaphor for the whole idea behind the book. I mean, let alone Oscar Wilde's imprisonment for 2 years in a hard labor camp was like a concentration camp. It is, it is. What he went through was like being in a concentration camp. But what profoundly moved me was I started studying lesbians in history. And way back in that time period, you could have two women that were friends, and they could hug each other, and they could act affectionate, and there wasn't any problem with that. You could even have two wealthy women living together and labeled spinsters, and nobody thought anything wrong of that. But were they labeled lesbians, they were then deemed insane, and the treatment to cure them was rape. And this was so
this is at the turn of the century, around 1895, where your book takes place?
Exactly.
Because that's hard to believe.
Exactly.
I mean, we're not, a little more than a century away from that.
Well,
I had no idea.
Yeah, I had no idea either.
Actually, I had an idea because I read your book, but right.
Well, the severity of Oscar Wilde's imprisonment, the severity of what was done to people because of intolerance, when you start reading the case study, it's why we can look at one child on the news and our heart breaks, or one dog on the news and our heart breaks when there's suffering or tragedy. But you start thinking of a whole big war or a whole nation of poverty, and it's too overwhelming to comprehend and take in. So these specific examples just inspired and motivated me to be the voice of so many people that have perished at the hands of intolerance. And I feel grateful that I can be a small part of that, spreading the light on that.
And because of that, your book really struck a chord. I noticed on Amazon that you had like 270 reviews, and often on Amazon the reviews are just like 5 friends.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've been read internationally. Do you think part of the reason is because you struck a chord with people in terms of this intolerance, and perhaps we do live in public a life that we should live, and we're not really living the life that we want to live?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that when you start talking to an individual and you learn about his or her heart, how they really feel, and strip away their conditioning and their programming and their belief system and what they think, and just address them as a human being, and you ask them a question, the heart knows what the mind can never conceive of all that is possible. And love doesn't come out of a belief. Love doesn't come out of a thought. Love comes out of that place. Here, it comes out of that place that knows, that resonates with, we are all human beings. And what's the division between all of us? The mental, the mind, not the heart. So that just became very, very clear to me in writing this book and in studying and in having my own illness and having to sit at the seat of my own soul and my own mind and my own heart that we can relate with. We shake our head and we relate with what's authentic because we live it and we feel it and we know it, and we have similar emotions and experiences that we go, yeah, and it resonates with ourselves.
Now, it's funny, this is an inspiring book, and I have to ask, do you have something else in the works?
Definitely. Oh, right now I'm I was going to talk about the animal rescue that
okay,
inspires me.
Tell our viewers, I mean, on a lighter note, all the proceeds from your book go to a worthy cause.
Yes,
right.
And I'm very grateful. My passion is rescuing dogs. My husband and I have been involved in animal rescue for the past 28 years.
Thank you.
We can't imagine our life without dogs. And right around the time when I finished this book, my dog Tazzy, who was a 15-year-old Rottweiler, was starting to head into Never Never Land. And as she degenerated, the book came to fruition. And when Taz died, the book got published. Right around that time also was when the Santa Paula Animal Rescue Center was opened. It's the first and only no-kill animal shelter in all of Ventura County. And it just came to me, another flash, donate the profits. I'm grateful and lucky that I can financially do this. All the profits are going to Spark. And we've been blessed.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So get as many furry friends out of cages and into their forever homes is a passion. It keeps me going when I'm weary and tired. And promoting your own work is not for the weak of heart. But when you think of the dogs in cages and their little faces and their little tails wagging, you can do things that you just didn't think you had in you.
Right. Now, there's a lot of aspiring writers out there. Any words of advice to them? You mentioned the word passion, and that always seems like a great place to start. But I think there are a lot of people that have a book in them or really want to write a book, and they're intimidated or gosh knows what. What would you say to somebody who says, I really want to write a book?
What I say is this. A writer writes. You tell your critic, you tell the inside of your head, you tell your thoughts to just shut up. Just be quiet. A writer sits and writes, and that's what defines a writer, not what they think about what they're writing, not their own self-critique about what they're writing. When you sit in that chair, whether it's for 5 minutes or 25 hours or 6 years, you're a writer. And then when you finish a project, you work with an editor that can help you put the house on the story. Make it look nice, make it look presentable, paint the walls and get the grammar and get the sentence structure so you don't blow the readers off. But really, all a writer has to do is sit their butt down in the chair and just get started, and that's what defines a writer.
So it's not a complicated thing, but you do have to shut those voices off. I mean, the self-critique, the...
You just move through it. You move through it. The voices can be babbling, but you keep going, you do it. It's like the Nike commercial. You do it, you just do it. You do it.
Right.
You know, I had an epiphany a few years back when I had to go to this ER job that I was getting bone weary, tired with, and I felt like, I don't want to go to work.
Because you're a nurse by profession.
I'm a nurse
right?
practitioner
Right.
by profession. And then I realized they put years into training me. I am needed on the job, and it's the right thing to do to show up. And I made myself go to work and show up, and it made me feel good. A writer, it's the same. It's the same with any job. Writing sometimes is glorious and joyful. Sometimes it's work. And you show up and you do it. Whether you're blank or not, you just do it. Even if you're writing on a piece of paper, I'm blank, I don't know what to write. You know, we all know that when nothing comes out. But you're sitting in the chair and you're showing up. And every writer, sooner or later, something's going to come out.
Right, and when that happens, it can sometimes run away with you, right? I mean, it sounded to me like you were waking up in the middle of the night, I mean, from reading your book, and these people are talking to you, and that's fun.
Oh, God, it's great.
Yeah. I mean, to be overly simplistic, in the end, you know, certainly writers have created lasting works that have changed the world, but in the end, should it be fun?
Oh, if it isn't fun, what's it about? If this opportunity that we have in this lifetime with this go-around isn't fun, then what's the point?
That was a leading question, but
so no, I mean, that's my major philosophy. Laughter is the top of my list. I wouldn't trade laughter and joy and fun for anything, and I mean not at the cost of hurting another human being, but just what is possibly better than laughter? I mean, it changes your chemistry.
Right, and there's parts of your book that are really funny, so
Yeah.
that comes through because you know. The general themes are serious and sad. I mean, you know, Oscar Wilde's story, and I love the quotes because he seemed to maintain his sense. There's a quote at the beginning of each chapter from Oscar Wilde, and I'm familiar with Oscar Wilde, and he had a great sense of humor despite the fact that, or it seems to me he had a great sense of humor despite the fact that he, you know, was, I mean, it's terrible what they did to him.
Yeah.
So let me ask you quickly, we're just about out of time, but this is a broad question, but I think it's an encouraging one, excuse me, for writers. There may be no better time than today to be a writer with the advent of self-publishing. Can you address that briefly?
Absolutely, yes. First of all, a writer sits down and writes, and then all you have to do once you complete something is get on the internet and search out self-publishing. And all kinds of things will come up, like the World Literary Cafe, book blogs, Goodreads, Facebook groups, and you will find a whole community out there who will handhold you through and help you get your product out there and promote your product. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful community of supportive people.
So in this time frame when we live now, there's probably never been a greater opportunity for a writer. It used to be if you didn't have an agent in New York and an entree to the major publishers, it was going to be really hard.
Oh,
but now
absolutely.
It's a wide open field, right?
Absolutely, completely, yes. I started with a publisher and then I took over and went into my own self-publishing. And a lot of my friends are published with a publishing company, and after the first couple of weeks, they have to do all their own promotion themselves. The big publishers are not doing that anymore unless it's the big, best-selling top people. Where there's the money, and it's just not happening.
So in a sense, whether you self-publish or go through a traditional publisher, you're sort of in the same boat after a couple of weeks anyhow.
Exactly,
right.
Exactly,
right.
Exactly.
And is there anything you'd like to add? We're just about out of time. Anything at all? Wide open.
I think the most important thing, and what I want to say, and I hope that I can encourage other writers to just get out of your own way, get your thoughts out of the way, and sit down and do it. And if you have a love for writing, don't look at the goal. Don't look at the there. Stay within this moment, right here, right now, and work with your one word at a time, your one sentence at a time, and your one smile or torment at a time, and move through and make yourself do it. And that's what's important. And then come look for me on Facebook and I'll help network you.
That's great advice. And actually that's obviously Paulette is inspirational to any writer out there. We'd like to thank her for being on the show. My name is Ken McAlpine. Thanks a lot for watching. And if you want to know more, you can go to Amazon.com and find Paulette there. Thank you very much, Paulette. You were wonderful.
Oh, my pleasure. Great.